Welcome to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 104, How to Select a Dog Trainer, Considerations for Selecting a Dog Trainer, How to Interview a Dog Trainer. Professional dog trainers provide an invaluable service to your dog and your family. Their expertise, knowledge, and experience can help you reach your goals and dreams with your dog, but sometimes it can be a little tricky to know what dog trainers are worth working with or not. If you search dog training or dog training near me on Google, a ton of trainers will populate. You've got small businesses, then you also have franchises of dog training that pop up as well. But how do you actually figure out what dog trainer is worth working with? You may be asking yourself, why is this discussion even important? Unfortunately, there have been too many shady cases with dog trainers where we have had to intervene on behalf of the dog and owner, or bad dog training in general that we have needed to fix. Cases where dogs are being trained improperly, improper diagnosis of the behavioral problem, dogs not being properly taken care of, or families not properly supported by their supposed dog trainer. Dog training is an investment into your dog and your family. So how do you ensure that you are choosing a wise trainer to invest in? And that answer is in your understanding on how dog trainers typically work and how to properly interview dog trainers, which means having a level of knowledge yourself on how to do this. One question you might ask is, why would you work with a dog trainer versus DIY your dog training? Professional dog trainers are experts in their field. They have knowledge, experience, and expertise to help meet your goals with your dog. The same reason why you would use an expert in the field of HVAC, auto repair, painting, roofing, contracting, dental cleaning, etc. We do live in the age of information, so it's easy to watch YouTube, read a blog, or listen to a podcast and learn about something. But the unique thing about dog training is that every dog is unique. It's not as easy to train a dog as it is to change out your car battery. Your dog is a living, breathing being with their own personality, their own character traits, and you need that expert to help you navigate that in some cases. One thing we need to understand is that there are no state or national level certifications for dog trainers, so literally anyone can call themselves a dog trainer, even if they don't know how to train dogs at all. They've never trained a dog. Maybe they've just watched some YouTube videos. And no, I'm not hating on self-taught dog trainers, but it does take a very special kind of person to self-educate and apply what they have learned in actual real-world situations. Certified dog trainers are certified through some organization which will award them the certification, and the standard for most certifications widely varies. Most franchise trainers have a 2 to 4 week training period, then they're handed a certificate of dog trainer. Then this process just doesn't teach the trainer enough and doesn't give them enough experience training to actually be a professional dog trainer. And I will say I'm not a fan of franchise trainers anyway. Most of these are a scheme for the franchise to make money rapidly. They don't have the best interest of the dog or the family. How can you determine if a trainer or a company is in a franchise? Just search that company name, and if there are many locations all over the place, most likely they are a franchise. Then you have the difference between trainers that are training by themselves versus a team that's training. Trainers training by themselves could be part of a franchise. They could be just a small business, but it's typically someone that's operating from their home. They've got board and trained dogs with them in their home, maybe boarding dogs. They're going out to do lessons. They're doing everything themselves, which will lead to burnout and typically doesn't have the best interest of the dog in that trainer. If you have a team, then you have a number of people operating together, taking care of the dogs, training the dogs, meeting their daily needs. So with that, I've got the professional dog trainers at Canine Revolution Dog Training with me today. And we'll just start off by pros and cons, trainers training by themselves versus a team that's training. Pros and cons. What do you think?
Well, at the end of the day, when you weigh everything, a team is going to be the better option, right? So like you have more possibilities to, like you said, set the dog up for success. If I have, like me myself, I'm by myself, I'm a dog trainer, and let's say I take on 4 or 5 dogs at one time in my house to train, I'm responsible for every waking moment of that dog. They're from the moment, first thing in the morning when they got to go to the bathroom, their feeding, their exercise, their mental stimulation, their training, all the way till the last time they need to go to the bathroom at nighttime. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, that's going to burn somebody out. You're doing that 7 days a week. Let's say most board and trains are, a good one is going to be 3 to 4 weeks, right? It's something you'll find that we'll do a 2 week, but let's say, every single day that one trainer is handling that dog. So repetitions, if that trainer knows what they're doing, like you're getting good repetitions, you probably are going to be consistent on that side. So that'd be the pro, right? But having multiple handlers handling that dog, number one, is going to let that trainer have that rest that trainer needs. Maybe they have 1 or 2 off days a week, right? Now we have a team of, let's say, training assistants or other trainers that are going hands-on with that dog, getting more repetitions for that dog, but it's also more repetitions for the dog to experience multiple handlers, right? At a certain point, you got to transfer that dog back into the home to be handled by, at least what we're finding, most people are, a couple, right? So like there's going to be 2 other people in a home. Maybe there's some kids. Maybe it's, some family members that need to handle that dog as well. A team is going to better set that up. So that's a couple of things initially right off the top that I'm thinking of that a team's going to be much better.
Kind of emphasizing on the possibility side, like when you have those special cases, making sure that, you have a team to collaborate with, run scenarios for that dog, make sure that they're setting that dog and those families up for success when that dog comes home, because that trainer is educated and been through those things with your dog, so that's going to add a lot of value to that training program because they're able to do those things. If you're by yourself, that's going to be difficult. That could be unsafe,
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pro in my mind for a team.
Yeah, that's like there's a really good point, because like everybody's experienced some version of tunnel vision at some point. You know what I'm saying? So there's been plenty of times where I've been training dogs and I'm just tunnel vision on this one particular issue, and one of you guys will be like, well, have you tried this? Oh crap, no. I haven't. Obviously that's the obvious answer, right? But I just needed some outside perspective. That's a huge point.
Yeah, safety too. If you're dealing with like an aggression case,
Yeah,
it could, and this dog is a big dog or has an advantage on you. That could definitely be a factor. You might need someone to spot you while you're working with that dog until that dog gets to a certain point in training. Versus if you're working by yourself in your house, and this dog goes at you, who knows what could happen. But I kind of have a unique perspective on this because whenever I started training, I was by myself. I was working out of my house by myself, had dogs in the house, and so basically from the time I wake up till the time I'm going to bed, it's for the dog 7 days a week, doing the board and train, doing boarding for dogs that had already graduated from training. And so that can also lead to burnout. Once you hit that burnout point, if you hit that, then you're degrading your work with the dogs, right? You get to a burnout phase, you stop your walks, you start getting slack with your training, or you start cutting corners with your training. So that will happen at a certain point. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But if you're training dogs out of your house, you're by yourself, that will happen. It's just a matter of when it will happen. You know what I'm saying? But let's go ahead and talk about some of the different ways that people will typically train, or that trainers will typically train. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each. Your most common ones are going to be private lessons, group classes, or board and train. So we'll start off with private lessons. Can you guys give pros and cons on private lesson format training?
Yep. The potential pros for private lessons are you as the dog owner are doing the training. You know what I'm saying? So there's no necessary transition process from a board and train back into the home, right? Which typically we will have like a pretty in-depth transitioning process, how to make that smooth. When you are doing the training, you're in that you're just doing that process. You know what I'm saying? So when you get to your, there's never, I like to say there's never like an end stage or a final product. You know what I'm saying? But when you get to a certain point, there's like all that stuff's been put in. You've developed the relationship with your dog. None of that work has to be done. So that's a pro. The downside is, like, I think you have to be very intentional. It's definitely possible, but you have to be very intentional. Like your timing is extremely important. Like Chad mentioned, a little bit ago, like dog trainers should be experts in their field, and their timing is going to be very precise, or should be, right? As far as when we're marking behavior with dogs, you have half a second to do that. So if you're a little bit off when you're teaching a dog and the dog doesn't know the behavior, that can affect the bigger picture. That can affect your end result. You know what I'm saying? With some inconsistencies and stuff. So I'd say those would be the biggest things to consider. Is like your timing has to be very good. You've got to be very consistent. You got to be prepared to work your dog every single day, and that's what we find. Like a lot of people, that's why they want our board and train, is because it's like, yeah, look, I can work my dog, I can maintain it, but I don't have the time to be putting in the thousands of repetitions day in and day out, being consistent with the structure and all that kind of stuff. So those are the two main things I think about.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is the consistency of people. Because a lot of people will be, hey, I want to do these private lessons, and we'll go do them. And how many times is you on the second or third lesson and you're doing the same thing that we were doing in the first lesson? And it's like, if we can't be consistent or devote ourselves to our dog and help them progress, then just do the board and train. Because at that point, like you said, when they come back, it's, hey, X, Y, and Z daily, basic maintenance. You can fit that into any schedule and be good to go.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple big ones just popped in my head with the private lessons. The pros are, like we already said, you're actually working with your own dog through every step of training. One thing you have to be mindful of there is your consistency, like Chris said, your timing, also your management of the dog outside of training.
Right.
If there's some kind of problem with training, you might have to do some kind of special management protocol to get your dog to focus on the training aspect. Or if there's some troubleshooting that needs to happen between your sessions with your trainer's not there to troubleshoot it. You probably don't have the experience yourself to see what's going on and troubleshoot it, so that can be a bit of a con. But another big con from my perspective is your trainer having a relationship with your dog. If your trainer has a relationship with your dog, your trainer kind of knows more things about your dog, maybe some of their triggers, maybe some of the things that they like, maybe some of the things they don't like, so that your trainer can provide better advice to you. And if your trainer has a relationship with your dog, your trainer can better serve you and your dog, because your trainer can help you coach your dog through different things or show you things with your dog that they wouldn't be able to do if they didn't have a relationship. So that is a limiting factor in the private lesson space. But there are a lot of people that go through private lessons, they have success to their level, and that's great, but there are limitations to that as well. Highly insecure dogs, probably not a good candidate for private lessons. Aggressive or reactive dogs, probably not a good candidate for private lessons, just because those dogs themselves need a relationship with an expert trainer to help them through certain phases of their training, but also they're going to need big troubleshooting throughout their training progression. They're going to need a lot of troubleshooting as different things unfold as they progress through their training. So those are the big ticket items that I have for private lessons. Any other thoughts on private lessons?
You're likely not going to achieve what you would in a board and train. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can get the basic obedience through the private lessons, but like teaching off-leash conditioning and like all of these things can be a little bit more difficult, I feel, as far as like teaching the person that, because we spend a lot of time becoming trainers. It's like now we have to teach them every aspect of that, and it's just not really feasible. Another thing is the length of time that it takes. If you do a 3 or 4 week board and train, you're good to go. Private lessons, it could be 8 weeks. If you can meet with your trainer each week, do one session, you could be 8, 9, 10 sessions in before you hit your training goals. So that could be something that I think that would be frustrating to the owner, because they just want to get it done and have a trained dog, so we got to be realistic with our timelines as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big thing too is like you've got to, if you're doing the private lesson route, you need to on your own also learn about dogs, like learn how dogs learn, how a pack hierarchy works, all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like a lot of people don't understand the bigger picture. So when they're like, hey, I'm hiring this private lesson dog trainer because my dog is barking at the window at every dog that walks by. That's the problem that I want solved, right? Like, to truly address that issue, we've got to go way back here. And we got to get, like, if I can't get my dog to sit at that window when the dogs are walking by, right? It's like the dog's like him barking at a dog is irrelevant, right? Like we got to get some basic stuff down. And so I think a lot of people get discouraged when trainers are starting in the beginning, like, hey, let's work on some obedience. They're like, no, that's not my problem. My problem is this barking over here. And it's like, well, dude, you've got to have this foundation. You've got to have communication. You've got to have a relationship with your dog. Your dog has to desire to want to be with you, do what you want to do, instead of barking at that dog. To get to that point, there's so many other things that go into it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, they paint this picture in their mind like, hey, I want 4 or 5 sessions. Come over here, teach me how to solve this problem. Sometimes that can work. There are some things that it's like, okay, we can show you how to do some management to where we'll make this behavior extinct or whatever. But for the most part, you got to understand the bigger picture of how your dogs operate.
Right, exactly. Your dog's mind is like a puzzle.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle to make it operate the way that you want it to operate.
It's like an onion.
Like an onion layer.
With layers.
Exactly. There's lots of layers to
We
it.
haven't
Lots
talked
of
about the
layers.
onion.
Well,
in
and
a
to
long
kind of
time.
add on to what Kevin said, like the timeline, like increasing the time that it could take, you also have to think about what it looks like after those private lessons are complete. What type of support do you have? You know, it's worth looking every time you have a question or every time something specific comes up. Are you having to fork out whatever cost of that private lesson is again, you know, just to get some time with your trainer? Or is it worth looking into programs like ours where you have support after training, you know, to kind of for that lifetime, you know, to make sure that, you know, you can stay in touch with your trainer, that there is no expiration date on that line of contact.
Yeah, the budgeting aspect is a big key as far as pro and con, because initially you would think that the private lesson's saving you money, because typically board and trains are going to go for a couple $1,000 depending on your trainer and all that. Private lessons will go for a couple $100, right? So initially you would think you're saving money on the private lessons, and your trainers, you know, they're telling you, hey, if you buy 5 lessons, I'll give you a discount on them or whatever. But just like you said, Aaron, in the long run, you know, what is actually going to be the better investment? Because it is an investment in you and your dog and your family as a whole. So if I do the private lessons, typically that's not going to come with lifetime support or extended support. If I go with the board and train option, typically that will, for most trainers, I'll say, will come with some type of support after the board and train. Some don't, which we'll talk about red flags later, but you know, most of those board and trains will include some kind of follow-up care, follow-up support for you and your dog. Moving on to group classes. If you're looking at possibly doing group classes with a trainer, what are some pros and cons to group classes?
Kevin has explained this perfectly in our Q&A, but the amount of time that you have on your individual dog, you know, so if we're looking at like the trainer, how many trainers are in the class, and we're instructing a general, you know, task or command or, you know, engagement, whatever we're focused on, how much one-on-one time are you getting with your trainer and that trainer with your dog? And then that trainer's focused on someone else. What's your dog doing in the meantime? What if your dog masters that in a second and you're ready, you know? Or what if they're moving on and you need more time spent in this area, you know? So I think it comes down to like how much one-on-one time and attention are you actually getting?
They're too vague too, you know, like what are you addressing? What's your issues? Well, hey, I want a group class because, again, let's use the dog reactivity scenario. My dog's dog reactive. If I show up to a group class with a bunch of dogs, that's not going to be productive. Like, what am I doing? And in fact, I'm counterproductive because now I'm just getting reinforcement of my dog reacting at dogs, guaranteed. Right? So, like, now either that trainer has to give me one-on-one attention to get my dog under control, which is not going to happen, like Aaron said. Right? Now we're back to just self-reinforcement. Right?
Yeah, usually in that case, they'll tell you to go walk away.
Right.
Go walk over there. Right?
Yeah.
Get away from the other dogs that are in the group.
Yeah. So it's just not going to be a productive use of your time. Where group classes come in, you got to have some foundation of training in place. So now we can use it as more of like a socialization type of training session where we're getting good positive experiences to other dogs, to other people, whatever distractions, you know, that we're working on. But there's already a foundation of training in place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there's too many cons to a group class to even say that there's any pro to them. Unless you've got the foundation of training. Like it's typical for a lot of board and train trainers to do group classes after the board and train, or
Yeah.
a number of, they'll offer some type of group class after the board and train for continued support, which I think is appropriate. But group classes without that is just too many cons. I would just steer clear of those.
I mean, I have seen some people do like seminar type group things where
Right.
like the dogs are put up. One dog comes out. We take a look as a group at this one dog. We put that dog up, get the other dog. Like I could see maybe some benefit there. That could be a pro, but everybody all at the same time.
there could be a pro to the owner going to a class with
Sure.
a trainer without their dog.
Yeah.
The trainer has some dogs. The trainer shows them some things, lets them work on some things with the trainer's dogs.
Yeah. That's
Then
a
they
good
go
idea.
home and apply that to their dog.
Mhm.
That could be some kind of beneficial class that an owner can go to.
Yeah.
But that's getting super complicated.
Yeah.
That's potential for chaos.
Lots
Yeah.
of chaos. At that point, it's like just do a private session if you're trying to work with it hands-on yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so then your third tier, all the big tiers of training, you've got the board and train. So that's a very popular, that's a very common one. What are some pros and cons with the board and train option?
I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of it, but like the consistency is going to be better generally, as far as like your dog is going to be immersed in a pack structure. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to be optimized for learning. They're ideally going to be managed well, so they're not going to be put in situations where they can self-reinforce on the behavior that we're not wanting them to. Right? They're getting ideally in a good board and train program. They're getting a lot of work, a lot of repetitions every single day, right? Whether that's with a trainer, with a bunch of staff. Hopefully, there's a team kind of like how we have. So like you're going to see rapid success, right? So I would say the con would be the transition, right? So like you're not involved in the training in this point, right? So like what we do, we send videos so that the owners aren't left in the dark, but they're being brought up to speed on some of the stuff, but there still has to be a transition. So I think a lot of people do have a perspective sometimes of, I'm going to send my dog to the board and train, right? Like, hey, I'm getting my brakes fixed on the car, right? I'm going to send them to the board and train. They're going to come back home. They'll do whatever I say, whenever I say it, and they're going to be, robots essentially, right? So it's like, it doesn't quite work that way. You do still have to work your dog. The difference is your dog knows expectations. You have a communication system. So now it's just a matter of us saying, hey, when they do this, you do this, right? Here's the protocols. Now, if you don't follow the protocols, it's not going to work, right? Follow the protocols, you're going to be successful. So I can see that. Like I've definitely seen that for sure with some of our clients. Like I think that's the perspective, right? So that's on the trainer to make sure they're clear communicating, which I feel like we've done a very good job doing that, saying, hey, you will be doing some work after this. It's not just one and done kind of deal.
Right.
So.
Which also comes down to like we're talking about today, selecting a trainer. Some trainers will have a better board and train than other trainers.
For sure.
So the questions we'll get into here in a minute will help you flesh that out a little bit,
Yeah.
Aaron, did you have some pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of talked about the relationship aspect. Like we study dog behavior, right? This is what we consider ourselves experts in. So we're going to have that relationship, or your trainer's going to be able to have that relationship with your dog. They're going to know, in certain scenarios, what makes them, excited, what makes them maybe a little nervous, what do they like this, do they not like this, and be able to educate you on that, like a big one being like the whole, well, they always want to be near me, they follow me everywhere. It's like, well, that's maybe a little bit more of separation anxiety, so kind of educating them in that regard. And because we know their dog, or like they love dogs, they always want to go towards them. It's like that doesn't necessarily mean that, and in this instance, this is what we did, this is how we find that out. And so we're able to have, and also make it a positive experience for your dog. We're taking our time with them. That amount of time allows for you to, spend more time on a relationship, on engagement, going on walks, building the bond. That way they view it as a positive event, as a fun thing to do, versus a rushed product,
Plus, troubleshooting, like you were talking about. If there's some kind of difficulty, if there's some kind of problem, having that expertise, that experience aspect to be able to work that dog through that, And if you're stumped on it, hey, your team can help you troubleshoot that and think about that, versus someone that's training by themselves. They get stuck on it. They're like, well, this dog just won't work.
Right.
This dog just can't be trained, which isn't true. You just got to think outside the box,
Yeah.
right? You got to pull in other thoughts, other methods sometimes.
Obviously a con, your dog's not with you for a mountain of time
Right.
as an owner.
Sure.
That's
So
definitely a con.
Yeah.
that's difficult.
But it could be a pro. It could
some
be a
people,
pro. Some people need
Yeah,
separation.
I have clients who are like, please take this dog away for 4 weeks.
yeah. I just think of both sides of the
Sure.
spectrum. Like some people need it. Some people are like, I can't imagine. So
Yeah.
and we definitely get that. We empathize with that. But
Well,
when we
another
think
pro
long
could
term,
be if you send your dog to a board and train, you take vacation, you send your dog that's getting trained at the same time. So
Yeah.
that could be a pro.
yeah,
Sure.
you know
It
your
just
dog's
depends on the situation.
yeah, your dog's taken care of. Your dog's getting everything it needs.
If you're picking the right trainer.
if you're picking
if
the
you're
right
picking the
trainer.
right trainer.
Yeah, I mean that would make me feel good.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
So
Good to go. All right. So within these types of training and with different trainers, you've got different training methods. So we'll talk about training methods real quick. So I'm going to throw some out there. We'll talk about pros and cons. Positive only training. Give me some pros and cons.
I mean, it's the world doesn't work like that, right? So it's a con, in my opinion, right? Okay, but
What is positive only training?
so typically
when
this
you
is
hear that, what's that supposed to mean?
this is going to be rewards only, essentially, right? So we would say we're only using reinforcement for. So typically that means if there's going to be no type of accountability or corrections or anything like that, right? So we're just using rewards. When the dog does the right thing, we say good, we give them a treat, right? That's essentially a positive reinforcement or a pet or good praise or whatever. If they do something bad, we typically are going to do what? Ignore it or something, you know what I mean? And somehow that magically addresses
Well,
that.
that's the thing. These positive only people, they say that they're positive only, but if you really get to the science
You
of it,
can't do it.
anything that they're doing is also getting into other quadrants of operant conditioning.
Right.
So they're technically not just positive only. They just don't understand
Yeah.
conditioning enough to really understand what they're doing. But
Correct.
they're throwing positive only out there
'Cause it feels good.
Right. It feels good. It's a trigger word. There's people that are like, I only want positive only.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the pros and cons of positive only? Are there pros to it? Could there be any pros to it?
I mean, yeah, sure. I would say in the initial phases, yes. Like the initial part of relationship building with a dog, you should be using mostly positive reinforcement, right?
So you're saying
Engagement.
that a con is that it's limited.
Mm-hmm.
A con is that the training is limited. You
for
cannot.
the end
Right.
final product.
Right.
Let's just use we keep using the scenario of dog reactivity. If that's what I'm trying to address, I mean, dude, that dog's getting positive reinforcement reacting at those dogs. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? So it's like you're not going to really truly address that behavior. And I'm not going to say that it's impossible, right? Because yeah, sure, it can be done, but you're talking a long time and a lot of engagement, a lot of work, right?
It probably won't happen. It
Probably
not.
won't.
Depending
Yeah.
on the reinforcement history of the reactions. I mean, the barking at the window outside at dogs makes the dog feel good. It's releasing endorphins
Right.
in its brain, so it's getting self-reinforced.
Right.
So you have to have something that's more reinforcing
Yeah.
than me barking at something which makes me feel good, right, as a dog, which is not going to happen.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think from an in-home perspective, like if I'm constantly having to do that, right? Like I have to constantly reward my dog in order, I'm bribing them.
Right.
Like, I'm never really establishing that good leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to have your treats on you 24/7. Sleep with them. I mean, it's just
I
that,
do,
that,
but no, I'm just
that can be, like annoying,
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, the minute you use a kennel, the minute you use a leash, you're already exiting positive only.
Well, you'll see how many positive reinforcement trainers they offer the treat. The dog, like they're trying to get him to sit. The dog's
Right.
butt comes up. What do? They put it back behind their back. That's
Already
all of a sudden
exiting.
you've moved out of that
Yeah.
Right.
positive reinforcement.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You're now in negative punishment.
Right.
It's like you said, it's just a buzzword.
Right.
I've seen
Exactly.
these positive trainers at the market with remote collars.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah.
and that's what. But people hear that, and they say, "Oh, that makes me feel good." Nothing's going to happen. And then I guess they just talk them into, okay, now we got to do accountability. But like y'all said, it does not exist past a certain stage in training.
Another training method that's common among trainers is e-collar training. So talk to me about pros and cons of e-collar training. And when I say e-collar, I mean day one, your trainer's working with you and your dog, they're putting an e-collar on your dog.
Yeah. Not ideal. Right. So like this goes more into the category of like old school style training, but not quite, because you're not using the leash as much. You're relying more on the e-collar. Right. But at the end of the day, when you're using the e-collar properly, there's a very in-depth conditioning process to teach the dog what that stimulation from the e-collar means and what they're supposed to do, right? And so you put that on day one. Number one, like, let's just say it's a board and train day one. This dog comes to me, like, I'm putting this e-collar on and starting to give it stimulation and then making it do something, right? Like, that's not going to be conducive for learning for the dog. It's going to be very stressful. They're experiencing something they've never experienced before, and you have no clue. Like, most collars have different levels. You have no clue what level that dog is going to be, what's going to be appropriate for that dog, and some dogs, like, may not show that they're feeling that. So what do? They increase it until I get some type of response, right? And so, like, now that dog's freaking out or whatever, it's like, we just need to let me just push down on their butt, and then I'll let off of the stimulation. So, like, like, okay, the pro, they may learn very quickly, maybe, right? But
depends on the dog.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But the bigger con is it's going to be super stressful for the dog. It's not going to be ideal. They're going to very quickly get collar wise. You're going to have to use that collar, like that. This training is not going to apply outside of when the collar's off. You know what I mean? But also, your dog's, like, you just shattered your relationship with that dog. You know what I'm saying? So
you're using correction. You're using stimulation to induce the dog's behavior. What if the dog wanted to do the behavior for you? Right. So you're not letting your dog do the behavior because they want to. You're not working your dog's drives, working that relationship so that your dog wants to do things. You're basically forcing it to do certain behaviors, which isn't really going to help you address root causes either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fair at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, you want to do everything in the best interest of your dog, then, there needs to be a foundation and some communication before those types of things are introduced.
One analogy is, if you're watching the video, we're sitting at a table and there's a couple items on the table, right? We got some Jocko Go energy drinks. We got Jocko Milk. We got water. We got a pen right here. We got a beanie over here. We got paper right here. All right. So let's say I was training Chris. I'm a trainer. He's the dog. I put an e-collar on him and I want him to pick up this pen right here. That's right next to me. But he's a dog. I can't tell him that. So I'm going to use an e-collar to train him, right? So I put the e-collar on him and I start correcting him with the e-collar anytime he's doing anything other than go for the pin. So I start correcting him and he starts, going all over the place. He's getting anxious. He's trying to figure out what to do. So he eventually starts grabbing things on the table. He grabs the Jocko Go. The correction is still there. He grabs a water bottle. The correction's still there. Maybe I'm increasing my correction, which is increasing his anxiety, increasing his stress about the whole situation. 10 minutes later, he eventually makes his way over to the pen and grabs the pen, and I stop correcting him. So then he realizes that, hey, to get that correction to stop, I have to grab this pen. That's like an e-collar trainer training your dog how to sit, right? So not really conducive to learning. What would be better for Chris specifically... Okay, you guys ready? What would be better for Chris specifically is if he was a dog and I was a balanced dog trainer and I want him to pick up this pen off the table. I let him check out the table. And anytime he shows any interest in the table, I give him a Skittle.
Maybe a trail of Skittles.
That'll get Chris going.
Sour Skittles.
That'll get Chris going. And so as he gets closer to the pen on the table, I give him more Skittles. Then he grabs the pen, I give him a bunch of Skittles.
Bag of Skittles.
Right? Then I grab the pen, I throw it somewhere else. And as he goes to seek out that pen, I give him Skittles if he's on track for that pen. But if he deviates from the pen, no Skittles happen. Right? Let's say I play this out. As time goes on, Chris understands that, hey, to get the Skittles, I got to pick up this pen right here. And then later, what I can do is I can later implement a correction for not going for the pin when I tell him to go to the pin after I've taught him. But that's the quick and easy explanation of how you would teach your dog to sit.
Well, something else to think about in the first analogy of just starting to use the e-collar for grabbing items on the table, right? Like, you may not get to that 10-minute mark. You may have a dog that says, screw this, I'm not grabbing any more items.
They shut down.
You know what I mean?
I'm
just not going to do anything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
If I don't do anything, I don't get the correction.
Right.
Well,
Maybe.
then you can also have Chris could then, get associations with grabbing a Jocko.
That's right.
He could.
We don't want that.
No.
We don't want that. Jocko's good for you.
Yeah.
So he may avoid Jocko for the rest of his life.
Not good.
Yeah.
Right.
Or now think that association is now towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You're the one that's stemming it. Now every time your dog's around you or your trainer, they're like,
Exactly, because you show up, now this starts happening.
stress.
Right.
Yeah.
The stress is induced. You go away, the dog's like, okay, I can hang out, So that's e-collar training, right? Pros and cons, there's cons to it. But not saying that e-collars are bad. We definitely use remote collars. But the methodology of training that we're talking about, where it's used from day one, is not advantageous for you or your dog. What about a leash and collar trainer? They're training with a leash and a collar. Pros and cons for that.
I mean, in what sense? Like talking, like we use leash and collar for training. So like that's management wise, you need that, right? So like I'm going to be using a leash and a collar when I'm training my dogs. Right?
Leash and collar, nothing else.
Yeah. Now we're kind of in the same boat. We're
Right.
at a certain point, I got to force this dog to do something, right? So now let's say I don't have an e-collar. What am I going to do? I'm going to have some type of choke chain, slip style collar that can add pressure, right? So now I'm going to use a similar process. So what you'll see commonly, maybe to do the sit behavior, a trainer might pull up on the collar, adding pressure to the dog's neck. I might push down on the dog's butt. As soon as they sit, I release the pressure, right? So like, again, not conducive to the dog. It's going to be stressful. It can be, you're just adding stress when you don't need to, when you can go back to like what Chad said, making them want to sit, right? By using food, right? Or your positive reinforcement, right?
Right.
That kind of stuff.
All right. Then you've got the, rewards based is basically positive only. Then you got the balance trainer. What is a balance trainer? Talk to me about that one.
There's going to be someone who toggles between all four quadrants, right? And so that they have it in a healthy way, primarily building behaviors in that positive way. Once they demonstrate that understanding, introducing the accountability, like you said, like a way to let them know that we're going to hold them to those expectations, and that's going to set them up. It's easy to conquer that in an environment like where we are. There's nothing around us, that's very low key, low arousal. But then going places, like the farmer's market, you with your analogy on the pen, if you throw that pen in a market and Chris goes and gets it, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So it just, I think it expands and solidifies the training, really makes it so that, one, they're enjoying it and it's fair. And that you have the effective leadership towards your dog. You're that leader role where your dog respects you and your dog trusts you. And that's only going to strengthen your relationship in the long run. So I think being balanced, pros.
This is the world we live in. We live in a balanced world. We live in a world of consequences, right? When we do certain behaviors, we get what we would perceive as good consequences, right? Or positive associations. Good things happen. I show up to work. I get a paycheck, right? We do bad things, right? If I speed, I get a ticket. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Sometimes. There's like we live. This is just the real world. You know what I'm saying? We don't live in a world of just harsh aversives all the time. We don't live in a world of just positive reinforcement all the time. There's got to be a balance. Now, you as a dog trainer, you got to still understand how the dog's mind works. So like we're gonna be operating maybe more in one quadrant in the beginning phases as you teach a dog, but the goal is we're just operating in a world of clear communication, clear expectations. We have boundaries, we have rules that we expect our dog to follow. If they do things that are not conducive to their safety or things that we don't want them to do, there's going to be accountability, right? If they're doing the right things, there's going to be some type of reward or reinforcement, and that's just a balanced world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a balanced trainer can fluctuate through anything. They're not limited on what they're doing in training, but they're training your dog systematically to progress them to a point that is meeting your goals, your expectations for that dog, giving you clear understanding, clear communication, so on and so forth. So we've talked about the ways that trainers will operate: private lessons, group classes, board and train. We've talked about some of the major training methods: positive only, e-collar, leash and collar, balance training. Now let's talk about if you're interviewing a trainer, some questions you might be asking. So you guys give me your thoughts on this, but one question that comes to mind if I'm interviewing a dog trainer, what is your training philosophy? If I'm interviewing a dog trainer, I might ask them, what is your training philosophy? What are some things that are good to hear? What are some things that are not good to hear?
What do you mean philosophy? You know what I'm saying? Like, if they're like, they don't know what you're asking. You ask these questions, they're like, what? Philosophy. You know what I mean? Tell me
Right.
about some dog training theory. Ask these questions. Like, their philosophy should involve all these things that we're talking about. I operate within all quadrants of operant conditioning, right? Or you can ask that. Do you operate in all quadrants of operant conditioning? Oh, what's operant conditioning? Right? Like,
Right.
those would be your red flags and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, that's a really good question to ask. And based on their answer, like, you may look elsewhere. I don't know. Depends on what they say.
I was recently talking to someone who referenced that the company they signed up with, it was their big key words were, we need to break them down to build them up. And so, like, they didn't like the whole, we need to break your dog down. You know, we're going to break them down. They were like, it didn't sit well with us. Ultimately had them, it didn't sit well with their gut. You know, has them looking elsewhere, you know, even after signing up. So
That's good.
just some terminology, like you say, that I, like, to me, I, as a customer, would be like,
Yeah.
Well, also, don't be afraid to, like, advocate for your dog. Advocate
Right.
for yourself. Like, hey, what does break them down mean?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, can you explain that in a little bit of detail for me? You know,
Yeah.
Right.
maybe it's something that's rational. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it means, like, increasing heavy structure. So I don't know. Well, like, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where I think so many people are like, they just don't go to the next step, or like they'll either be in one camp where it's like I don't know about that, and that's probably a good call, right?
Yeah.
But or you're on the other side where you're like, well, they're a dog trainer, they must know what they're talking about, so I'll just let them do their thing.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
ask any questions.
So if you're asking a trainer, what is your training philosophy? I want to hear just clear. I want to be able to understand what you're going to do with my dog, right? What's kind of your philosophy of training?
Yeah.
Are you putting an e-collar on my dog on day one? Are you using accountability? What are the things that you're doing? Another question could be, what is your training progression? So a training progression is how you get a dog from starting point to the final point, right? So if you hear someone say, or if someone asks you, what is your training progression? What are your thoughts on that question?
I think, again, be prepared to go into detail here. You know what I'm saying? People are going to say things like, well, first we work on obedience, then we're going to go into socialization, then we'll do our distraction work, and then we do our return session. Like, that's a progression, and that would be in line with our progression, right? But what's all the little steps? Well, how do we train obedience? How do you get my dog to sit, right? Like, what does that look like in detail? They should be able to walk you through that, right? Like, they should be able to walk you through what their general progression looks like. What is my dog doing day one? Or, hey, my dog's going to be with you for 4 weeks. Can you give me a breakdown as to what that looks like, maybe each day, maybe each week as they go through, right? And you should get a very detailed response, and that alone should tell you if that progression is going to be good to go or not. You know what I'm saying?
If you're asking for details, your trainer should be giving them to you. If you're asking for details on training and they're saying things like, do you want training or not?
Yeah.
You know, I'm the
Why are
trainer.
you asking all these questions?
Why are you asking these questions? I'm the trainer. You know, they're getting upset with you. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
Probably want to move on.
Right.
Another question could be, what if my dog is not food motivated? If you ask that to a trainer, what if my dog's not food motivated? What should they be hearing?
What should they be hearing?
Yeah.
They should be hearing that, there's other drives that we can try to, manipulate to create motivation. There's social drives, there's toy drive, there's prey drive. They're not taking food. All right, well, maybe I'll just feed them from my hand until they're comfortable enough with me to start taking food. When they eat their meals, they train. And the food is the reward. There's tons of different ways to create motivation, but what you're going to hear from most trainers is probably a long pause while they think about it, and then they may start talking about pressure and all kinds of other things, which aren't good. But those people that you talked about, I just went through the same thing with the consultation where they're literally telling these people to their face, yeah, we just have to break your dog. And in my mind, I'm like, how do you even say that to a person? Like, one, it's not the right thing to do. Two, it's just so, like, vulgar. You know?
Right.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So if the dog's not food motivated, you want to hear that trainer talk to you about how they can increase your dog's hunger drive. That should be the first focus of a good trainer, is if the dog's not food motivated, how can I increase that drive? How can I get that dog to start taking some type of reward, being okay with some type of reward. And if the dog is actually, in fact, not food motivated, what would that trainer be doing to get the dog trained, right? So that discussion you would be having with the trainer based on what they're doing. If it's making sense to you, then good to go. If it's not making sense, that's probably a red flag.
Mm-hmm. But
the first focus of a non-food motivated dog is trying to increase that food drive, which sometimes the dogs are overweight. Sometimes you need to go into some other drives, like Kevin said, like prey drive or social drive. Sometimes you need to further develop that relationship. Sometimes you need to do hand feeding. I mean, there's a wide variety. This is where troubleshooting comes in. Mm-hmm. There's a wide variety of things that need to be done to, in fact, make sure that that food drive is not there, mm-hmm. which sometimes it's not. Some dogs are not able to get food drive going, at least on certain timelines, you know. But,
well, speaking of timelines, like that's a factor as well, right? So like you got to factor that in. Like the right thing to do is to give that, like that dog, you're taking that dog out of its home environment and putting it into a new environment.
If you're doing a board and train.
If you're doing a board and train, right? Like let's just assume we're doing a board and train. That dog's there's going to be a level of some type of stress or anxiety. You're changing environment, right? And now, like, what you do day one can help to alleviate that stress, right? But like that might take some time. There's an adjustment process. But if my board and train program is 1 week or 2 weeks, you know what I'm saying? Like now I'm as a trainer worried about my timeline of mm-hmm. your expectations as the owner having a fully trained dog at the end. Now I'm like, crap, this dog's not taking food from me, you know, and I got to push the timeline, mm-hmm. right? Versus having the ability to have a longer program to allow that dog to truly acclimate, spend time getting comfortable with me. Like why would a dog want to just do obedience for mm-hmm. me right off the rip? They don't even know me, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you got to factor in the timeline as well when you're asking, you know, interviewing the trainers.
Yeah. Foundation of training is your most important thing.
Yeah.
But if you're doing private lessons and your dog's not food motivated, you're working with the trainer. They may tell you like, hey, you need to feed your meals out of the hand. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing that, you're not managing your dog properly. Your dog's also getting table scraps. You're also killing your ability to develop the hunger drive. So that's one of the things with private lessons, like we talked about earlier. There's little things at play here where they impact your goals long term, right? But you have to be upfront with your trainer if you're doing private lessons and tell them everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are questioning you to try and help you troubleshoot, they're asking you, is your dog getting table scraps? What's your dog doing while you're eating? What's going on here? You don't want to get upset with them. You want to be honest with your trainer and tell them what's going on, right? Another question you might ask a trainer that you're interviewing, what quadrants of operant conditioning do you use and why? So if you guys hear that question, what do you want to hear if you're a dog owner? What don't you want to hear?
Well, I don't want to hear silence. Like
yeah, that's step one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Or what do you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I want them to explain, like, you know, in detail what they're using. I mean, and just in one, I want to hear the balanced, you know, that's what I want to see in terms of final end goals, you know, with how am I going to be successful with my dog. But, you know, just with not knowing, you know, and just in doing my due diligence interviewing, you know, if I hear someone on one side of the coin that's hard on it, you know, ask why, you know, or ask like, why don't they do this? Or what's their reasoning behind, like, you can ask them questions. You're interviewing them.
Right.
So challenge what they say, you know, challenge us on what we say. We enjoy those conversations, you know, but like, don't just accept it, you know, even if they say like, oh yeah, positive only. Well, why do you do that? You know, or like, what happens when this happens? You know, my dog maybe would do this. So what would you do here? You know, things like that. That's just a question I'm going to be really getting down. I'm going to sound like a toddler. Why?
Yeah.
Why, you know?
Yeah. I need a how, when, and why, basically, of each one. And you should be able to explain each one, give a real-world example. If somebody's asking you that question, they've done the research. So they're trying to make sure that you know what you're talking about. And I've had a few in my time that have actually brought up conditioning and wanted to deep dive on it. I'll deep dive on it. We can talk for an hour about the whole training progression and everything until you're comfortable. But yeah, how, when, and why would be the big ones for that question there.
There's a lot of trainers out there that actually don't know what operant conditioning is. They don't know what classical conditioning is. So if you're figuring that out, asking these questions, you shy away from those people because they don't really understand dog training.
Yeah. They may be using it, but they don't know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
you have to be cognizant of, like, a good trainer knows and understands this. Why? Because we're constantly moving in and out of all of those quadrants, and you've got to be able to understand what quadrant you are in and where you need to go potentially, right?
Right.
So it is like there are definitely trainers that can be successful dog trainers and teaching behavior, but don't understand. But I mean, if you want that next level of professional dog training, this dog trainer is going to understand how to operate very intricately in and out of all quadrants of operant conditioning.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, just being able to explain the positive and negative, how they don't mean what they seem to mean right
Good or
away,
bad.
you know. And same thing with like the punishment and the reinforcement, right? Being able to get people comfortable with those and know those through and through and be able to explain it to them in a way that they can understand.
Exactly. Another question you might ask a trainer that you're interviewing: what if my dog needs more time? This could be a board and train, it could be a private lesson, but if someone's asking that question, what should they be hearing in response to that?
I mean, for us, like, I mean, what I tell everybody when I'm on the phone talking to potential clients, I'm saying, like, hey, we have open communication with you. So especially like we're talking about a board and train. What if my dog needs more time? You're gonna hear from me. You're gonna hear. We're gonna have a conversation, and I will keep you in the loop along the way, right? So like, if your dog needs more time, it's gonna be your decision. You know what I mean? You can also say, nope, I don't want more time. Okay, well, here's what this looks like. If we don't extend this program or give them more time or whatever, we can still potentially accomplish your goals. Maybe we're gonna transition, change the way we train in our private lessons after the fact or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, it's an open conversation. Like if your dog is taking longer or needs more repetitions of something, we're going to have a conversation versus me deciding to potentially stress the dog out and push them to meet a timeline.
Right.
Well, I think it also depends on what it looks like after training. You know, like we've talked about support. So what is support? Is there any? Is there not? So you pay this and then you're saying I need more time. What does that look like on my end? Like, and then, you know, as a customer, I'd have questions like, well, what was done? Explain to me why he needs more time or she needs more time. You know, what was done in this time frame to where we're not getting it done? You know, is there a reason? And they should be able to tell you, like they should be able to break it down and like part of that open communication, you know, and it just comes down to knowing if you already knew what their progression is, if you know their daily routine and things like that in the day, then you should feel good about like, okay, I trust this trainer. Like they're giving me options or they're telling me they need more time and I believe them, you know. So what are we going to do going forward? You know, is that board and train can be costly. So what does that look like after, you know, things like that. Those are all questions I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Just to do my due diligence as an owner. And then especially if there's very limited support afterwards, you know, so.
You basically want clear communication with the trainer.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to make sure that this trainer, first of all, if you're interviewing them and you aren't feeling good about your conversations with them, if you're feeling like they're holding back or they're not having clear communication, or if you feel like they are bothered by your conversation, probably a red flag. But if
especially as you ask questions,
right, exactly.
Like now you're grilling them and they're
Exactly.
getting uncomfortable with that.
Exactly.
It tells you what you need to know.
But if you're having clear communications, you're feeling comfortable, you're feeling confident, then that's probably a green flag about, you know, green light about moving forward, you know, and that you can expect clear communication with them, you know, if you are working with them, for example. Another question you might ask is, have you experienced a dog that you can't train? So what should be some things people should hear in response to that question?
There's really no such thing as an untrainable dog. It's just what level of management do we need to employ after to make sure that they're successful, you know? Because obviously we've all dealt with special cases to where like, hey, this is not the norm, but here's what you have to do in your day-to-day so that you can be successful with this dog. Because it's not just going to be clear-cut across the board, right? So it's just no such thing as an untrainable dog. That's pretty much what we live by. And then it's going to pretty much fall on the person after. You know, if I'm talking to somebody and I know they have a special case, I'm going to be very blunt with them, very upfront, and set realistic timelines, goals, everything. Realistic life after training, you know, to make sure that they can understand everything that they'll potentially need to do for that dog. So.
And usually, like for the most part, we usually work that out in our initial phone conversation or our consultation. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are your goals? What does life look like? You know, what does life look like for a dog? And so, like, there have been situations where maybe owners and their lifestyles are maybe incompatible with the dog that they're wanting to get trained, right? They're trying to train the dog to their lifestyle when really we probably, as the dog trainer, need to help the owner train to the dog, to fit the dog as well, right? Because it's like, hey, you know, if you're more on the lazy side, you want to just hang around and chill out after work, but then you got, you know, a working dog or something that needs to be worked. It's like that you got to paint a picture for them too. Yeah. It's like, hey, the dog's never untrainable, but what are you willing to do and not willing to do? And so, like, this is what this is going to look like if you train with us. Here's the things you're going to have to do to make it successful. If you don't do those things, we can't guarantee your success. See what I'm saying?
Or another example is a dog that they want everyone to pet.
Right.
They want everyone to pet this dog.
I was just thinking that.
You know, whatever, like a doodle or, you know, golden retriever, lab, whatever. It's traditionally one of those dogs that everybody can pet, but your dog just has that personality where it doesn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you don't even know these things until you're actually training the dog.
Yeah.
Right? Which is part of dog training. Again, it's a living, breathing being. It's an individual. If I go do a consultation with you, I'm only with you for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever. I'm not going to know everything about your dog. But if I start boarding and training your dog, guess what? I'm getting that relationship. Now I can provide better advice and insight to you as the dog owner. And some dogs, sure, they can learn to be good to go and they can learn to be able to be pet by everybody. Some dogs are not. So that's, you know, going back to where we talked about private lesson versus board and train, that's one of those pros and cons to having the trainer having the relationship with your dog where they know your dog at that intricate level to really advise you on what's good for your dog, what's not good for your dog, what your dog likes, what your dog doesn't like, right? But the question, have you experienced a dog that you can't train, comes down to that trainer being able to describe to you how they can troubleshoot different processes, maybe give you some case studies of dogs that they have trained, how that turned out. And again, going with your gut as far as, do you feel comfortable with what this person's saying or do you feel like they're bullshitting you?
Right.
If you're getting the bullshit vibe, then you put up your red flag and you move on, right?
But also there are trainers that will say this dog is not trainable.
Or this dog needs to be put down.
Right.
Yeah.
If they say that, I mean, that's the good point.
Yeah.
If they say that, that's probably a red flag. I would
Right.
definitely go with the second or third opinion.
Don't take that
At
for
least interviewing other
Yeah.
people. Yeah, if they're saying that, you know, dogs can't be trained or this dog can't be trained, that's a red flag. That's a limitation on their ability to troubleshoot and use all quadrants of training, of operant conditioning, and all training methodologies of, you know, science behind dog training, right? And people training. Because dog training is half training the people, or probably 80% training the people, maybe 60% training the people.
Well, I think 80's right.
Yeah, 80% training the people, 20% training the dog, even in a board and train. So having the ability to train both sides of that coin, the people and the dog, are super important. So if they say that a dog couldn't be trained or they recommended a dog be put down or whatever, that's probably a limitation on the ability to train one of those aspects of training.
Well, too, like, I think, like, you were talking about the burnout side. Like, so, like, let's say, like, back in the day, you're doing a board and train by yourself, but I know you also were in collaboration with other trainers too, right? So, like, not that by itself may not be the red flag, but is that, let's say that trainer hits that wall, you know what I'm saying? Hey, I'm struggling. Are they outsourcing? Are they asking for help from other trainers, getting that outside perspective? Maybe it is doable with that person that's doing it by themselves, but are they closed-minded where they're going to be like, hey, if I can't train it, it's not a trainable dog, right? Or are we open-minded and like, hey, look, I'm like, even us, like, we collaborate amongst us in this table, but we're also looking at other trainers. We're also learning from other trainers and different things like that. You know what I mean?
Or how do you know if that trainer that you're like, let's say you decide to work with a trainer that's training by themselves out of their house or whatever, how do you know they're not going to hit burnout while your dog's there?
Right.
Now you're getting screwed.
Right. Or they're right in the middle of that burnout phase.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
Another question is, how do you train the dog owner and family? So let's say you're doing a board and train. You send that dog away. We talked a little bit earlier. How is the dog owner getting trained? How's the family getting trained? What are some things you want to hear in that case if you're the dog owner?
I mean, with us, you know, when I get that type of question, it's your training starts along with the dog, you know, because in these update videos, I'm going to be trickling information to you to help prepare you for when your dog returns home. On top of that, I'm sending you a packet of, you know, an instructional packet prior to them coming home to, again, prepare you. And then we're going to do one-on-one intensive training, which is basically like private lessons, but the dog's already trained. Now I'm going to be with you, you know, each week if need be for a few weeks to make sure that you're on track to your progression, and then continue to provide that support for, you know, the lifetime of the dog. That's what we offer.
And to deep dive into that, right? So I've seen some packets from a bunch of different trainers, right? Like, hey, look, they gave me some paperwork, you know, and it's like 2 pages. It's like a checklist. Here's what your dog learned. Sit down. It's like checked off, right? Like, no, like our packet's 15 pages, right? And it's very in depth.
Very
you know what I mean? Here's what your dog knows. If your dog doesn't do this, this is what you do. Here's how you reward your dog. Engagement, like we're talking about
Training
so many
equipment.
things.
This is how you use your equipment.
Here's where we went with
The
your
science
dog.
behind dog training.
Right.
if
Yeah.
you
So
want
it's
to.
like super. It's gonna set you up. So like everybody learns differently, right?
Yeah.
Some people learn a lot from that packet.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people take the packet and go throw
Right,
it out.
throw it
Right?
in
You
the
know,
trash.
I want my one-on-one sessions,
Right.
and I'm gonna learn more in person, or maybe hey, I'm gonna learn actually more doing things with my dog, right? So like you got to hit all of those things so that you're really setting the client up for success. You know what I'm saying?
That
If
is
you
still
think
right.
about the
Yeah.
type of learner, I mean, there's visual learners, you know, auditory learners, you know, hands-on learners. And so you want to make sure, one, that you're hearing the learning style that caters to you, you know, like not only that, but, you know, what if my daughter, you know, learns a different way, you know, same thing. So it's like, make sure it's ticking the boxes of how you and your family process information, you know, and age appropriate too, you know, like us educating people. I'm not going to have like, you know, I've had some clients like, I want my son to walk the dog and he's 4. I'm like, okay, well, that's a long-term goal. We'll get there, but it's going to be with you.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to support as he comes of age and can fully do that on, you know, independently. But yeah.
Or we're giving you hey, here's some things your 4-year-old can do.
Yeah,
right.
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
I think a lot of trainers get. And I've heard this from clients, you know, like they get pissed off by kids or whatever. They're like, I'm trying to do some training. These kids are up here running amok. I'm like,
Hey, I've had some 4-year-olds walk dogs with me. It depends on the dog, though.
Yeah.
It depends on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dog.
Right,
you know
right.
what
It
I'm
does.
saying?
Yeah. But I mean, with my clients, they're all like, what do I do for the return? Should my kids be here? I'm like, do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
dude,
Oh, yeah.
let's replicate this however you're going to live life. Like kids, I love kids, you know.
Yeah.
If anything, I might end up, you know, hanging out with the kids too much, playing with their toys and stuff.
Here we go. With some
Good time.
Skittles.
With some Skittles. Oh, the kids got the candy. So, you know.
Yeah, definitely something to pay attention to. You want that support, but you want that learning ability. That's how you prefer it. That's why for us specifically, we try to hit the visual learners with the videos, the auditory learners with the videos, with the phone calls and all that kind of stuff, and then your in session and your written learners through our training handbook. You know, so we try to hit every single type of learning style with our program, right? But not all trainers will do that. Plus, it takes time to do all that.
Yeah.
It takes time to shoot the video. You know, we have a dedicated video person to help us do that. But if you're by yourself, your videos will probably not be as high of quality, right? It might be shaky videos, less information in the videos, right? Those handbooks, you got to sit down, you got to type up that handbook, right? You got to send that out. That takes time. You got to send out your videos. We send them out twice a week, so that takes time, right? So all this takes time. So someone that's by themselves, they might be struggling to keep up with that amount of workload. You know what I'm saying?
And with that, just to kind of add on, you know, I think in what you receive during the training, it matters, you know? So like looking at a video compared to a still picture, right? So, oh, here's your dog in a sit and it's a picture. It's like, that's great. That was a 0.25 second capture of my dog. What happened after? And so, you know, I think it's important to see real life, you know, and like we emphasize, your dog's not going to be a robot. So you're going to see your dog not being a robot, but implementing the training, having
Right.
training adherence. And so you're going to see real life, you know, if you're healing and, you know, the dog that's healing with me is attempting to sniff the person who's catcalling them, right? Like, how do we handle that, you know, and just kind of going through that with you, because that's going to reflect, you know, in some way after training, right? It's
Right.
not going to be perfect. And ultimately what's important is that you feel confident in handling those things.
Right.
So like you always have those to refer back to. You always have the trainer to refer back to. So I think that aspect is important, you know?
Definitely. Another question you might ask is, where will my dog stay during training? This would be specific to a board and train most likely. But if someone asks, where will my dog stay during training? What are some things that owners would probably want to hear?
Secure, climate controlled. You know what I'm saying? Like those are the big ones. Are they outside? Are they inside?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So if it's like a single trainer, it's are they staying in your home, garage setup, a shed setup outside? You know, like what's the setup? You know what I mean? Is it secure? Can somebody come in and steal my dog? Right. Is it climate controlled? If I'm sending my dog in the winter, you know what I mean? Do they have heat?
Or during the summer.
Or during the summer, is there air conditioning? Right.
You know, we've heard of cases of dogs dying from heat exhaustion when they're at a board and train, unfortunately, because there's no climate control or there's inadequate climate control. You know, we have redundancy in our systems. We have 4 different climate control units that are actually 5 that are responsible for the areas where our dogs stay in a board and train. And you know, if the power goes out, what happens? Well, we have a generator. You know, so I mean, that climate control is very important to us, because guess what? We're training French bulldogs. They can't breathe that well. You know, if they get into a heat exhaustion situation, that could be very bad, much worse for them than like a long-nosed dog. You know, we have dogs with special needs, allergies, older dogs, all this types of stuff. So that's definitely a big factor as well. You know, but security, you know, what's your security methods? How are the dogs monitored if no one's there or at nighttime? You know, all these types of questions, definitely good to hear. Another question, are there any training methods you are opposed to? What if someone asks that to a trainer? Are there any training methods you're opposed to? What might they hear in that case?
Just depends. I mean, like, I think as a good trainer, you got to be open to everything. Right. So I'm not going to say, like, I would probably say, well, what do you mean by that? Elaborate on that question. You know what I'm saying?
I would say I'm opposed to putting an e-collar on a dog on day one.
Right.
That's what I'm opposed to.
For sure. I'm opposed to escape and avoidance type training, crank and yank type training day one or at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to use excessively stressful tactics to train. So I'm opposed to that. Right. But I'm also open to a variety of different things, of trying different things, even if it's something I've never tried before. I'm open as long as it's fitting the science of what we're trying to do and in alignment with the theory.
Yeah, you might hear like a positive only trainer say, I'm opposed to e-collars.
Yeah.
Right. But again, they have their time and place. It's not that you shouldn't use them at all, but you shouldn't be using them at the beginning of training. You know, positive reinforcement has its place. You know, you use that at the beginning of training, but towards the end of training, you need to make sure that you're using other quadrants, other balanced aspects of training. So that's definitely a tricky question. That'd be a good question to ask. Another question, we've already talked about this, but another question, how do you manage multiple dogs? So if you're doing a board and train, right, there's going to be other dogs there. So you ask the trainer, how do you manage multiple dogs? What are some things you might hear?
I would want to hear that there's multiple staff members, you know, to provide that level of management. That way the dogs are moving. You know, if one dog's out on a walk, another dog can be, you know, learning new obedience, another dog's hanging out on spot, just rotating them around in their day-to-day to ensure that stimulation's occurring and learning is occurring.
Or if it is a single trainer, right? And they're saying something like, well, it's on a rotational basis. I take the dog out, I work them. This one goes back in the kennel. I grab my next dog, I work them, and I just do that rotation. Your follow-up should be, well, how many dogs you do at a time, right? And then do the math. You know what I'm saying? As to what that dog needs.
But also, if it's a single trainer, they also are going out to meet with people. They're taking dogs home. They're taking dogs here. So what's happening during these times?
Sure. Yep.
You know, they got to eat. So what's happening while they're eating? You know, so that's the problem with a one-person gig.
Sure.
You know. Another question, what is your daily routine? What will my dog be doing during the day? So if an owner asks that question, what could they hear? What are some things they should be hearing, maybe not hearing?
I mean, go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just going to say, again, if this is a question where it changes, you know, I can't really tell you day to day because, you know, X, Y, and Z. And it could be because they're by themselves, you know, and their plate is full, you know, which is a red flag. Otherwise, like, you should have a routine. Like, routines and structure is important for dogs and, you know, the staff at hand. So you should be able to talk out, like, specific times for this, you know, feeding, potty again, you know, exercise, you know, training, and from start to close, you know, and also like, what are their hours?
Right.
Are they are they open all week? You know, are there days off? What is my dog doing when you're
Well,
off?
if that trainer's sleeping until 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Which we know for a fact that's happening.
Right, that's happened
We've
with
heard
trainers
that
in our
many
area.
times. Yeah. I mean, I usually get this question a lot, and I usually get cut off. Like, okay, that's like, I mean, I'm like, hey, we got 2 shifts every single day, 6:30 a.m. We're opening up. This is our priorities. We're doing our potty routine. Then we feed them. Then we start work at 9 o'clock. Trainers might be coming in. We're doing this, and like it also changes based on the progression of the dog, right? Like, hey, I'm staggering the way I intake dogs. I might have a dog that's got a week left of training versus a dog that just started. That dog that just started might get a lot of my focus in that morning time because I'm taking that other dog out with me to distraction work and different things like that throughout the afternoon, right? And we have a second shift that's coming in at 4 p.m. and they're and I'm just step by step. Here's what our day literally looks like till 9:30, 10 o'clock we shut down or whatever.
And they're like, all right, Chris, that's fine.
They're like,
I got it."
sounds good. Sounds like yeah.
Well, routine is very important for rehabilitation of dogs, right?
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't have a very consistent routine,
Mm-hmm.
which is 7 days a week, if you're in a board and train, then
Yeah.
that's a problem,
Right.
right? Another question someone might ask, what if there's a dog fight? What do you do if there's a dog fight?
Well, that's going to be like to me. I'm looking for management, right? So like a dog fight breaking out at our place is like almost 0%. Like it's not going to happen. Why? Because the dogs are going to be managed. They're when they're unsupervised or nobody's with them, they're in a kennel, right? If the dog comes out of the kennel, a handler is physically with them, has them on the leash, right? So even if something were to happen, let's just say 2 dogs got into a fight, that would mean that under our system, there's 2 handlers involved in that equation. One dog has one on the leash, one has the other on a leash. Now we can literally separate it just like that. You know what I'm saying? Of course, there's other intricacies. Like, yes, maybe I'm a dog trainer and I'm training 2 dogs from a home that have a history of fighting. Like, yeah, I got to get those dogs together, and there might be, maybe there's some scuffs that happen there. But hey, again, good question there. How are you going to break that up?
Right.
Are you a physically capable trainer? You know what I'm saying? Or are you a little bit on the overweight side? A little bit,
Well, also that comes into like training progression. If I have 2 dogs with a fighting history that I'm training together,
right?
At what point do I actually start working on those
1.
scenarios together? So that's a training progression question too.
For sure.
But yeah, definitely. Another question: what if there's a medical emergency? My dog has allergies. What if it breaks out in hives? Its eyes get swollen. It has to go to the vet. What if they're saying stuff like this?
I mean, again, it's communication, right? If something's going on, I'm going to get a hold of you. I'm going to give you options. I can take the dog to the vet right now. You can meet me at the vet. You can come pick him up and take him to the vet at your convenience, depending on, the severity of what's going on. And I always tell people that, for whatever reason I can't get a hold of you, I'm going to act in the best interest of the dog. And they're like, okay, good.
Yeah.
And we're 20 minutes from a 24-hour ER.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So even if it's...
What if my dog has an allergy attack at 9:30 p.m.? They can't breathe.
They're going.
Yeah.
They're going to the ER vet.
Yeah.
For us anyway, if someone doesn't know, or if they're like, oh, I've never thought about that. That's never happened. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've definitely had that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've definitely had that happen for sure.
On call. Meet you at the hospital.
Yeah. I mean, things
I've
are
been
going
in
to
ER
happen.
parking lots 2 a.m. with a dog hanging out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Things are going to happen
Yeah.
when you're training dogs.
Sure.
Things are going to happen. What if my dog bites you?
No.
My dog has a biting history. What if my dog bites you?
We go on a
Normal
walk.
day.
We'll be that much closer.
No, that's good. That's a good question though, because I've had that a lot, and where people were like worried about that. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So like, I'm sure there's a liability side of things that people are like, oh my gosh, is this dog trainer going to sue? Like, I've had people that were literally stressed about me picking up their dog the day to start the training. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I mean, most of them like, hey, I got a kennel set up. Just go put him in there. You know what I mean? And then when we get there, usually it's no issues once we get to our place or whatever. But
Usually.
But yeah, like that. If you're a professional dog trainer, that's called cost of doing business.
Right.
You're going
Right.
to get bit by dogs. You
Oh,
know
yeah.
what I'm saying? So
Right.
that shouldn't be a. If a trainer freaks out on you for something like that,
Yeah.
that's a huge red flag.
I mean, or even interviewing someone who isn't on the board and train side, but you have a dog that has a history of biting. One, it's like you should feel like you can be honest with the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
Right? So like be transparent about like what your dog is experiencing, what you're experiencing with your dog. If you feel like you can't, red flag, and trust your gut on that. But if after hearing that, it's, oh, your dog bites, like they can't be trained, like then we go back to that question we just covered. Or if it's like, well, then I can't work with you anymore. Well, then you have that answer and keep searching and ask that question until you hear what Chris just said. You know, it's the cost of doing business, and we're going to spend time. That lets us know we need to go on a walk, develop the relationship, but also giving you the tools. Like, that's just more scenarios we've done with your dog to where we can help you, you know, as the client going forward, and just knowing how to handle those things. So, I mean, yeah, if they shut you down after hearing that, or they're shutting your dog down, then don't feel like that's a dead end, you know, training wise.
You can just tell them, good. Now I know the root cause of the biting.
Yeah.
I know what the scenario. I know how to work through it.
Yeah.
Now, I walked into a house about 2 weeks ago. I got bit. So, I mean, it does happen if you're a dog trainer for sure. But that doesn't stop you from training. The people were shocked, like, oh, we're still good to train. I'm like, definitely. Let's get to work. You know, it happens.
You need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've also had dogs that were like, had a history of biting dog trainers.
Right.
I remember specifically I had a German Shepherd that had bitten 5 different dog trainers.
Nice.
Had no issues.
Right.
So you know, so that might
well,
tell
that's
you a
also
little bit
part
about
of the way that they're training.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
That's
So
what
that might tell you what you need to know right there.
Yeah, the experience piece of a trainer handling a dog like the dog needs to be handled.
Right.
Well, and the vibes too, because most people, you tell them, hey, my dog's probably going to bite you. People are going to be jacked, you know, internally, even if they're calm on the outside. You tell one of us that, we're like, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
What if they ask, they ask a question, what if my dog is intact? They want to send it to a board and train, but their dog still has its goods.
Let's go.
No factor.
No factor.
No factor. I mean,
go.
sometimes owners are worried about like the mingling,
Correct.
So we provide the
mingling.
I mean,
The structure thing.
you know,
Right.
so
Management.
yeah, the management, we provide that management. We have structure, you know, explaining those protocols, and, you know, same thing with like, oh, well, my dog may go into heat, you know, no factor, you know, we'll make sure that, you know,
There's no chance of something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
yeah. So
What is another question? What is your experience? This could be a question you ask a dog trainer. What is your experience? If you got that question, what would you say?
Well, I mean, in our situation, like we have a very good system set up. Like, number one, I can tell you by the number how many dogs I've trained. You know what I'm saying? We can also, like, I mean, we've got podcasts, we've got our YouTube channel, we've got a lot of resources that I can show you my experience. You know what I mean? Like, here's me handling a reactive dog. You know what I mean? Or what most situations that somebody hits me up, hey, this is what I'm looking to get resolved. I could probably find something in the archives, or if I can't, Ben definitely will. You know what I'm saying? Where we can show you some experience. So like having
Training a deaf dog, training a blind dog,
right.
training a reactive special breed, whatever. You know?
Yeah. So like, I mean, a lot of it, you know, now what if you have, I don't know, you might have a trainer that's maybe new to the area or something. I don't know. Maybe they're good trainers, but they don't have the resources to have all these videos and stuff. I think like that's where all these other questions come in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard. That's a hard question. Like, how do you prove that? Like you said, this stuff's not regulated. Dog training is not regulated or anything like that. So I could say, yeah, I've been training dogs for 15 years. You know, can I prove that?
yeah.
So it's a tricky one.
If someone asks you, do I have to use an e-collar? What should they be hearing? What's a good thing to be hearing? You know, you're interviewing a dog trainer. You're wondering, do I have to use an e-collar? That's the question.
It's a very good tool when used properly to reinforce your communication. So I usually recommend using it, and I bring up safety, especially if you get into like the off-leash conditioning type things. Hey, leashes break, collars snap, whatever the case may be. But if your collar's on and working properly and in the right place, that's peace of mind for you. You know, so if you get to a point to where you're in your home and your dogs generally listen to you, yeah, they may not have to wear it in the home, but anytime you step outside of that door, they should have it on just to help mitigate any scenario that could possibly happen.
Yeah. I also tell people like in our board and train, we're going to condition the remote collar. It's going to be a part of that process. At the end of the day, I'm not going to force you to use any kind of tool that you're uncomfortable with, right?
Yeah.
But yes, this is a recommended tool under our program. I'm gonna lean, especially if somebody has a little bit of like an aversion towards the e-collar, right? Like I'm gonna try to educate them first, right? And most of the time we do. Like, what do? We put it here. Feel this. Feel what your dog is feeling, and we go through the process. They see it. They see it in use, and like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. The way you're using it makes a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, If somebody's like, I don't want to, I've had clients that, hey, I don't want to use it. All right, well, then this is what this looks like now going forward, right?
Here's the realistic.
But if we're in certain scenarios, we might say, hey, you got to be realistic here. You know what I mean? You also got to have realistic expectations based off of the tools that you're using.
Right. But even if they prefer, a slip chain or a prong to a remote collar, I bring up like the physical aspect. Like, why do you want to be physical with your dog?
Right.
That could lead to a degradation in your relationship. Whereas this is a neutral stimulation, and if he's not listening on his normal level, he understands it. We just turn it up a little bit, until he does listen. No exertion on our part, no loss of relationship, just strong leadership.
Right. In fact, if you use it right and consistently, you actually are going to get to the point where you don't need it as much.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Or any kind of.
I can't tell you the last time I moved from my baseline with like Zdeno. As he feels that little quick little nick of the stimulation, he knows that I'm going to escalate as needed. So he just.
My old lady hound dogs, they're just naked all the time.
Another question that you might ask a dog trainer: do you have a business license? Do you have insurance?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not willing to talk about that, then that's a problem.
Right.
You definitely want to have a legitimate business. Working with you and your dog for sure.
Or if my dog bites somebody while in training, who's liable for that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
Different kind of things like that.
Can I tour where my dog will stay is another question. Can I tour where my dog will stay? If that's getting shut down,
I don't let people come over.
I don't let people come to my house. Probably a red flag. Or if you go and tour it and you don't have a good feeling about it, probably a red flag too.
Mm-hmm.
These types of things. So bottom line, ask a question. If you don't understand the answer, ask another question. If you still aren't feeling good, ask another question. Repeat as needed until you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're finding yourselves just constantly not feeling good about the person you're talking with or the organization you're talking with, probably move on to another one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But people have to realize too, like you're giving these people your money. Like vet them thoroughly,
Right.
So you can understand what you're getting. Too many people I think are just so complacent, they just go, okay, yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing to think about, is the trainer that you're talking to really trying to help you, or are you just a sale to them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you definitely want someone that's wanting to help you, right? Someone that has a passion for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then another red flag would be if a trainer's running a high or immediate discount on their training, if they have immediate availability.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're calling, I can pick up your dog today, I can pick up your dog tomorrow. I mean, sometimes it does happen with good organizations, but a lot of times when you're seeing that, that's a red flag. That trainer is struggling. Maybe they're cutting corners. Maybe they're not doing things properly. Who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
But
could be overloading too.
Overloading themselves, possible as well. So definitely something to consider. If you see that could be a red flag. Now you go into more questions. Now you go into touring their place and going from there.
Which it's like, like you were talking about, like the wait list essentially. Like, well, I need someone right now, and there are cases like that where it's like, no, this needs to happen immediately. Which those are exceptions, but then there's just the normal or just kind of like the typical cases where it's like, we're looking at May time frame, or we're looking at 2 months or whatever, and it's people. We live in such an instant, gratification world where people are like, well, I'm interested in this now. I need this now.
Right.
And it's just like, I tell people like, this is something permanent, like think about, and I know we're not all into it, but think about like a tattoo, right? Like, I mean, yes, this one artist could probably get me in today as a walk-in, but like, it's permanent on my body. Is it going to be as nice as the person who has a wait list? And why is this person immediately available and this person has the 2-month wait list, you know? So I would say it's not always a good thing, and to kind of lean into that, figure out the why behind it.
Right.
Wait list is typically a sign of quality.
Well, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Definitely.
I learned that lesson the hard way. I got 6 cover-ups.
Kevin's doing his own tattoo.
Definitely. So keep asking the questions, get that good vibe, go with your gut, make sure your gut feels good about the decision you're making. Some common red flags: program length. If you're talking to someone, they have a 2-week board and train, that's immediately a red flag. They have a 1-week board and train, that's a red flag. Anything less than 4 weeks is typically not ideal. I mean, 3 weeks you can get some stuff done as long as they can clearly communicate to you what your expectation would be for a short program, right? but 2 weeks, definitely a red flag. Another red flag for me specifically is if I was looking for a trainer, the trainer's capability. You know, are they physically fit? Do they look like they could handle tough dogs, right? Because dogs are animals, right?
Strong
They're not all
animals.
chihuahuas. You know, even a chihuahua, you have to bend down
Oh yeah.
to handle
I
that
got
dog.
one
So
coming
you
tomorrow.
need that physical capability to bend over, bend down for long periods of time while you're working with that dog. You know, so is the trainer out of breath walking up to my apartment? You know, that's another thing to think about. Can the trainer go on a walk with me and talk to me without running out of breath? Something else to think about. Can the trainer pick up my bag of dog food from my King Corso? You know, that 80-pound bag of dog food, 50-pound bag of dog food, no problem. So things to think about. Because the trainer that is physically fit is able to also manage their time, take care of themselves, you know.
We'd add that like punctuality too, right?
Right.
You said at a consultation, or like 15 minutes later, oh, sorry, I got stuck in a bubble. Like, I mean, if somebody's default, you're starting to see like signs that they might be lazy, right? Like that is if they're lazy in that context, like right when you're first meeting them, they're going to be lazy in your training with your dog.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
But also, I'd say don't underestimate.
Don't
Come on now.
underestimate.
That's, I mean, yes. Don't judge a book by its cover.
I'm not
Right.
saying don't underestimate.
No, I know. I'm just saying as like someone who like I remember picking up a dog with Chris during my apprenticeship, and they were like, "You're gonna train my dog?"
Oh,
Like
yeah. Oh,
the dog's like about my size and weight,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, or maybe a
I
little
mean,
under.
that is a common thing too.
Sure.
You know, with
Yeah.
a lot of people, like, oh, they got a female trainer.
Yeah.
You know, she can't handle my
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
She can't handle my dog.
I'm
Right.
like, you'll
Well,
see.
that's where experience comes
video.
in too, right? So it's like Aaron can also go to the archive. Let's pull out some videos of her handling some big dogs, right? So like that's where experience plays into the factor, and your confidence, like the way you're talking to the people. You know,
Right.
like and this is no factor. I've trained big dogs. I can handle it. I promise you, I can do it. You know.
Well,
what I'm
that's
You
saying?
can also break out your deadlift numbers.
Yeah. Hey,
you
you
can
got a
break out your
barbell in the
deadlift
garage?
number.
Let's go.
That's the thing. So like that's where like I wouldn't like I would not feel and people shouldn't like be offended by that question. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's where it's nice to have that proof. Need be like if hey like here is an example.
In
you
fact,
know what I mean?
at Canine Revolution Dog Training, we have physical standards.
Yeah.
Right.
We have
There
a
we go.
PT test.
Here's my
Right.
numbers.
Here's
Exactly.
my here's my last test
Exactly.
results.
Yeah, exactly.
Hope you
Can
like
you do this?
spreadsheets.
Something else that you look at with the trainer's capability is their confidence. So that comes into what you just said, like, can you handle my dog? You know, if you're confidently handling that question, confidently answering that question versus someone that's insecure about it or not very confident in the way they present themselves or talking, those types of things, those are indicators as well as the trainer's capability. Trainer being late, like Chris said, timeliness. If I'm going to be late, I'm calling you. I'm texting you. Hey, I'm running behind. There's traffic. Right? So I'm always planning to be early, though. You guys have any stories about people working with other trainers or adverse situations with other trainers?
I mean, I just got, and thankfully they didn't go with this trainer, but they did do an eval. They went to the company, and that's where the guy talked about breaking the dog. And then he's like, when I work with this dog, I'm going to be wearing a bite sleeve, try to teach them that even though they bite me, it's not going to affect me, and just all kinds of red flags. And thankfully, those people, like when I started talking to them within 10 minutes, they were like, yeah, we made the right decision not going with them.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's all kinds of things. The bite suit thing is so common. If your trainer comes for a consultation, and you tell him you have a sketchy dog, and he shows up in a bite suit, just don't allow him into your home. Like, just send him on his way. Because we've had ones that have charged the dogs, made them go into the corner, pee on themselves, and then they're like, oh, this dog's not really aggressive. And it's like, yeah, they weren't really aggressive in the first place. They're just super insecure, and
Right.
they just made it 10 times worse.
Right.
Holy smokes.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of things you hear about that. Putting the dogs down. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a consultation. They met with another trainer. Trainer recommended putting the dog down, and the dog came right up to me and just sat and looked at me and was completely fine. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, I recently trained a dog trained by another trainer, not in this.
You fixed the training.
Yeah.
You
I
had to
mean, just
retrain the dog.
very, very evidently, like, pressure trained, leash pressure trained. And so lots of insecurity still present in the dog, lots of nervousness.
Good damn dog.
Yeah.
Damn
Associations with like males, and so.
She like me.
Yeah. Even after the training, talking with the owner about the previous training, like not just trying to hear a little bit more and hearing about, how they came about each other and like it was very informal. Like, I knew this person who knew this person and, and so it was just like evident that trainer had a very black and white program with like, this is what will work because it worked maybe with one dog, maybe their dog. And they're like, I can train other dogs the same way. And so like not flexible, not balanced like we talked about. And like it got the job done for the most part, like not completely because at the end of the day, the owner's still seeking more training, right? But like had a good foundation there, but now we have an insecure dog and we have a nervous dog. And so to be able to kind of rehab that was nice on our end. Like it felt really good showing her that positive experience, kind of changing that mindset for her. But it does, as a trainer, it does stink to see, like, I mean, especially with a great dog. And I mean, all dogs are good dogs, but, just wants to learn, like wants to do it, but has that nervousness to it.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
And their wallet gets double tapped.
Yeah.
Right. I was
Yeah.
going to
I
say
was so
good,
bad
good
for
on
them.
the owner for
Yeah.
actually going through a better program versus just being like, well, I already put out a couple thousand for this.
Yeah.
That's all I can do for it.
I mean, we've had a ton of cases to where they've come in from other trainers, or they contacted us, didn't want to wait, went with another trainer, then a year later they're back again. This trainer really effed my dog up, whatever. It's like, all right, put him in,
Right.
A lot of people are like, all right, this is like my second or third program. If this doesn't work, I'm done.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for them in a sense because I know that they got routed by people who didn't have the experience or maybe just didn't know what they were doing, whatever the case may be. But it is what it is. You gotta fish out the quality,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead. No, you tell your story. I like your stories.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris has good stories.
Is it the Christmas tree one?
I mean, I had a client, probably been a couple months now, sent so she had 2 dogs and they were trained in a board and train, e-collar, everything, all that. And then she got another dog and she was shopping around and found us, and she was like kind of low key unhappy with the other trainer. Like she was like not openly saying that even to me, but I could tell based on the way she was kind of grilling me, right? Like I could tell I'm like, you've had some experiences here, you know what I'm saying? But so she, like at the end of the day, she was skeptical and hesitant, you know what I mean? But she pulled the trigger with us with her golden. And then after that program, it was a 4-week program. She just saw something different, you know what I'm saying? She's like, the focus that he was giving you, the relationship side of things, that's something I've never seen before. And like literally at that return session, she books the other 2 dogs with us, right? And so and I'm working with these dogs, and like they have a concept of obedience, but I can tell they've never had any engagement. Like they didn't understand engagement. They didn't understand luring, right? Like how to lure with food and different things like that. So it's like, that's a pretty big, strong indicator that they were pressure trained or e-collar trained or, so like we had to go back to the basics with those dogs. And I mean, now they're all good to go. I've got another dog that was trained by another trainer that has a bite history and was going to get put down. You know what I mean? And I was told like, hey, don't trust this dog. He is e-collar trained, but he's at like super high levels. Got to be at really high levels. I just wrapped up the remote collar conditioning. So obviously first we went way back to the basics, build everything back up with the relationship. We just finished remote collar training. He's like super sensitive to the collar. He's like at level 5, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we've been in some reactive, like he's definitely had a reactivity. I ain't trying to say like, oh, he's all perfect or whatever, you know, like, yeah, there's definitely some things to work through, but he's now understands the expectations. He corrects out of those behaviors very easily, and he's very sensitive to the remote collar, you know what I'm saying? So like that too tells me that there's probably some pressure based. You go back to the analogy of the table, grabbing different things. This dog's getting hit with super high levels and doesn't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, I think, all day about cases like this.
Yeah, there's a number of situations that we've helped dealt with where trainers, whether it's the bite suit trainer walking into the house stressing out the
It's
dog,
my favorite.
Throwing
you know,
bean bags at your dog.
throwing bean bags,
Buy
throwing
a toy
cans.
every day to stimulate your dog.
Yeah.
What's the recent one I heard where if your dog's reacting and barking, you bark back at it.
So none of this stuff just doesn't make sense. You know, if
No.
a trainer's telling me that, I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not doing
Or
this. you know?
follow-up question: Can you tell me the science behind that? Like, can you explain how that works long term?
Right.
You know, well, it just does.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they might try to explain it to you like, yeah, this is what an alpha would do.
Right.
They'd bark
yeah.
at 'em.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
You know, I'm not a dog. I'm a human.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to treat a dog like a dog, but that doesn't mean I'm going to bark at my dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, anyway, we have tons of stories like that. You know, if you get on the phone with us, you can ask for more. But there's just so many, unfortunately, because there's so many trainers out there that aren't really trainers. Shouldn't even really call them trainers. You know, there's only, in our area, there's only a couple that I would consider good trainers. The rest are just phonies, you know. But there's so many of those out there, and those franchises that are popping up everywhere, unfortunately, you know, just dogs are not getting taken care of, you know. So a lot of rehabilitation's having to be done, a lot of training's having to be redone to help these dogs be the best dogs they can be. But just keep in mind that you and the trainer you select, you are a team. So you should be working together. You should be having clear communication on everything that's going on, whether you choose a private lesson, whether you choose a board and train. You and your trainer are a team. So keep that in mind. Go with someone that you feel good about, someone that you feel is really going to serve you and your family well. So with that, are there any closing thoughts on interviewing a dog trainer, how to select a dog trainer?
I mean, one thing that I also think about, maybe let's say you do know of a good dog training company, maybe like Canine Revolution Dog Training, but for whatever reason you can't get out to us, it's too far, whatever. I mean, we'll help you vet. You know what I'm saying? You know, like we'll coach you even more. Like, feel free to call us and we'll talk you through. Hey, or hey, maybe you have this conversation and you wanna just, hey, this is the conversation. These are the answers. We can help you go a little bit further if you want, just to make sure. You know what I mean? I've done that plenty of times with people.
We've done that many times.
Yeah.
Usually I'll have the people send me a list of trainers in their area that they're looking at, and I'll pick one out of those, either by looking at all of their feeds, or I'll call them myself and ask them some questions and then contact that person again and let them know. Or if they have no idea, I'll look in their area if they give me their zip code, you know.
Yeah.
So definitely we can help out for sure, but we're in it for making sure your dog gets taken care of, you and your dog. So you know, just keep that in mind, that you're a trainer and you are a team. So, you know, go forward with that. Make sure you're following your gut. If your gut's telling you something's off, something's probably off. You know, I was dealing with something recently. My gut was telling me something was off. It was non-training related, but, you know, I consulted with Chris. I'm like, hey, you know, this is what my gut's telling me. This is why. Chris is like, well, you should probably go with your gut. So what's my gut on that case, you know?
Never a bad choice.
I would also say, like, I can't emphasize enough, like, take time to process the information. I'm very much a person, like, I come by it honestly. Where
You're a processor.
After the fact. You know what I mean? So, like, a lot of times I'm getting through the conversation. There's
Well, we know you get amped up.
Yeah, there's maybe some, like, anxiety present for me of talking to a stranger. Like, I'm taking up their time. I'm sure they have a bunch of things to do. Like, whatever, where I just feel maybe a little rushed. I may find myself like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Got it. Right. But then when I leave and I really think about it, I'm like, I don't really know why this is that way. I don't know, you know. And so I'd say, you know, don't just be that yes person and then kind of walk away from it. Like, if something isn't sitting well with you, take time to process that. It does matter. You know, this may seem like you're just getting training for your dog, but it is so much more than that. So
I'd say on both ends of that too. Like, even if you're on the high, like, let's say it was a really good conversation, it's not gonna hurt you to take some time. Like, I mean, there are definitely people that are good sales people, you know what I'm saying, that can play the game and that can be very good at making you feel good. You know what I'm saying? So there's no, it's going to always take the time. It's going to always benefit you to take a little bit of time, take some perspective, let the emotions come down, whether it's on the negative side or the positive side. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Part of that's part of your interactive style, your personality. You know, me, if I'm looking at making a purchase or something, I'm usually assessing that website. I'm assessing their social medias. I'm assessing their YouTube. I'm looking at all the information. I can collect before I call them.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to have as much background information as possible. I call them, I start asking them questions like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like I don't know things, and I'm seeing what they're going to say, right? And then I might go into more detail, and if I feel like, you know, they're acting like they're short on time, you know, hey, is there a better time for me to call?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's someone that I really want to work with. But if I start talking to them, they're acting like it's a pain to talk to me, it's a bother to talk to me, I'm, you know, that I'm just kind of annoying them. I'm like, oh, I'm out here, I'll go
Right.
find someone else.
Especially if it's a service you know you're going to need to be involved long term, right?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
it's like if they can't give me the time of day in the vetting process whenever I actually need them after the product's been purchased or whatever,
Right.
it's going to be like this or worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So, and also I like a relationship, you know, whether it's my painter, whether it's my fence guy, whether it's, you know, HVAC, whoever, whatever service I'm using, I want a relationship with that person that I
Mhm.
can rely upon long term.
Right.
I'm not looking to get a different dog trainer every time I need dog training. I'm not looking at getting a different plumber every time I need plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
I want someone that is reliable, someone that is top quality, which means I'm probably going to invest more for that service, but that's what I want. I want that quality versus, you know, going with the cheapest option available.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's talk real quick about some of our affiliates. First of all, we've got Canine Revolution Dog Training. We've got all the dog trainers here. Chris, Aaron, me, Kevin. Chris, in 1 minute or less, tell us about yourself.
I like dogs. I like training. I like people, and I like helping.
Okay. What was your background before training?
Law enforcement.
All right, Aaron, tell us about yourself in 1 minute or less.
I was a former teacher, now dog trainer. Love dog training. Like training my personal dogs. Adding, you know, in my free time. Big reader. Big gym goer. You know. Yeah.
You
Just-
got your numbers in case someone questions your ability to handle
They're
their
ready.
big
I mean,
dog.
she's got her PT scores
They're ready.
ready to go.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, in 1 minute or less.
You skipping you?
I'm last.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Kevin, 1 minute or less. Tell us about yourself.
Kevin, former law enforcement, love dogs. This is what I'm going to do until I'm probably just going to drop dead on the property one day. So
But you're getting pretty old. You're getting closer.
Getting pretty
Kevin
old.
just had a birthday. Kevin just had a birthday. He's not even halfway through life yet.
just leave those ditches open. Put me in there.
I
Chris
got a
has his
spot for
trenches
you.
open.
I
Chris
got a
has his
spot for
trenches
you, bro.
And me, I'm Chad. I'm the host of Pack Talk Podcast. I'm the founder of Canine Revolution Dog Training, and started off in the Navy. Thought I was going to be in the military my whole life. Decided to get out of the military, struggling with my own dog. Resolved that. Jumped into dog training. Figured out there's a bunch of shitty trainers out there. So I'm like, I'm going to start up my own dog training business. So started up Canine Revolution Dog Training to help people train their dogs. And then along the way, you know, brought Chris on board, brought Ben on board, brought Kevin on board, brought a bunch of people on board, brought Aaron on board.
Thanks.
Right? So
You were late in the game.
A bunch of people.
not late in the
We had to get through the list.
The game's just starting. But
We're just getting warmed up.
anyway, you know, we have a staff of over 20 people. Probably over 25, maybe close to 30 now. I'm losing track, but we're here to serve you and your dog, right? And why do most dog trainers don't do that? Why do most dog trainers just stay by themselves? Cost, leadership, time management. Excuse me. You know, there's a big cost to having a lot of people working, right? Taxes, payroll, those types of things. But is it worth it for the dog? Yes. So again, we're here to support the dog. But Canine Revolution Dog Training, we've served dogs from all over the country. So you can reach out to us. Our phone number, 843-213-2676. Chris, tell them the email real quick.
info@caninerevolutiondogtraining.com.
Just had to-
Canine
excuse me.
spelled out.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how you contact us. One of our other affiliates, Canine Revolution Apparel, you can hit the link below, go on to Amazon to get you a Good to Go shirt, get you a Canine Revolution shirt, and you'll be good to go. We got chicken shirts, we got beanies, we got hoodies. It's tank top season coming up. We got tank tops.
Ooh, I gotta fill up.
So be ready to go. Our next affiliate, Jocko Fuel. Chris, tell us about Jocko Fuel.
Jocko Fuel, clean energy. We're drinking them now. Jocko Go, the energy drink, clean supplements. Right, you got your protein. Right, I'm on the protein. I'm on the milk. Kevin's got the Jocko milk. Is it the banana?
Yes, banana cream. Good one.
30 milligrams of protein. Right, they
Yep.
got protein. They got.
Grass-fed.
I've been on the Good Night lately. Right.
You haven't been able to sleep.
No, I've been a little bit jacked up, I think, lately. I don't know. But yeah, not with Jocko Good Night. Boom, sleep.
Oh,
Good
yeah,
to
as soon
go.
as you take that,
Good to
you're
go.
out.
Yeah.
For sure.
I gotta get some.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the Cold War, helps with your immunity.
Vitamin D.
Basically,
Definitely.
don't get sick. Vitamin D. Definitely taking that vitamin D.
I had a little bit
day.
of congestion this last week. I'm taking Cold War 3 times a day.
Sounds like you need it right now. You
Yeah,
might
I'll be
need
taking it after this.
Yeah.
I'm still a little bit congested. But Jocko Fuel, that's how you take care of yourself. Supplements for you to make you good to go, optimal. And you can use code Canine Revolution at checkout for 10% off. Next, we have Canine Super Supplements, the letter K, the number 9, supersupplements.com. That's supplements for your dog. Joint support, multivitamin for your dog's immunity, puppy formula for your dog's brain health and development, even if you have an adult dog. So what I recommend, you get that joint supplement at a minimum. Throw that into your dog food. Boom. Now your dog's good to go. And you can use promo code Canine Revolution at discount for 15% off. Ben, did you have something you wanted to say? Okay, we're making faces across the table here.
I love this part because he's brain support for your dog. Jocko.
I mean, it's right.
Oh, yeah, I
You know
know.
it's good for
I
you.
love the passion for
You
it.
didn't mention-
Jocko has the new brain power.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, you tried it?
Yeah.
That's like the puppy formula for us.
Right. Well, it's like Alpha Brain for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you
I haven't
think?
tried it yet.
It's a pill format.
Yeah.
It's a capsule.
I wasn't expecting it to be that strong.
He got smarter.
I think
He
my
got
brain
smarter.
was going faster than my mouth was
Good.
in consultations.
The last time we went out for our community
Kevin's a
relation
romantic.
night, I took some before we went because I knew I was going to have to be ready to talk to people, and so I was good to go for sure.
I do.
Couldn't
I,
get
like,
him to stop.
I basically take it before returns now, and it
Oh, yeah.
does good. But that first day I took it, I was kind of like,
It
okay.
hit you. It hit you.
Kevin went from warrior to romantic.
Yeah.
Well,
I
one
like
of those
how-
consultations was an hour and a half.
I like how Aaron says we're passionate about this part because we're affiliated with things that we are passionate about, only
Yeah.
things that we believe in, Aaron.
I know.
We're
That's-
not any fakers or phonies around here.
That's
No
why I like
jabronis.
The only things we believe in.
it. Gets them going.
But again, Canine Super Supplements, get that joint support at a minimum. Throw that in your dog food. Good to go. All right. Last but not least, we got We Feed Raw. And 100% good to go for your dog, right? So it looks like if you've ever gotten a pound of ground beef in like a package, that's what it looks like. But formulated specifically for your dog. You divvy it up as needed. Put it into your dog's bowl. Put some of that joint support from Canine Super Supplements in there. Give it to your dog, and your dog's good to go, right? Optimal nutrition for your dog and their longevity. Now, here's the deal. We understand that raw feeding there's a con to it. It's more expensive. It's more expensive than poisoning your dog with kibble. So, to mitigate that, what I recommend, put a little bit of kibble in your bowl, put a little bit of raw in your bowl, put that joint support from Canine Super Supplements in the bowl. Now you're mitigating your budget while you're still working towards that optimization for your dog, right? So that's a great way to start optimizing your dog's nutrition while still having some budget considerations, in fact, in place.
And our discount.
And discount code Canine Revolution that gets you 25% off.
All caps.
All caps. Chris figured that out yesterday. So check that out. Visit the link below. We Feed Raw. You can sign up for the meal plan. They'll deliver it to you as your dog needs it, which is what I recommend. That way you're never missing it. And you can go on the website when you're setting that up, and you select how much kibble you're feeding. Are you feeding 0% kibble? They'll make sure you have enough raw. Are you feeding 25% kibble, 50% kibble, 75% kibble? So they can help you equate how much raw you need with the amount of kibble that you're feeding so that your budget is optimized. So check that out. You guys can go below to the description, click the links for those, and you'll be set up for success. You and your dog. Because we got the Jocko Fuel for you. And we got the Canine Super Supplements, the We Feed Raw for your dog. So good to go.
Realistically, it's all across the board. It's all natural stuff. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
could take the dog supplements if you wanted to.
Well, you could take the We Feed Raw, you could cook it, you could eat it.
Yeah. It's got everything you need.
Definitely. 100%.
The weight gainer does smell like a protein shake.
I mean,
It
dude,
is.
it's got some good
Oh, yeah.
stuff in there.
Oh, yeah.
It does smell good.
All right, don't forget, rate us and review us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. Don't forget to check out Canine Revolution Dog Training and Pack Talk Podcast on YouTube and your favorite social media platform. Chris, if they need consulting or coaching, where can they email us at?
Info at Canine Revolution Dog Training. Canine spelled out CANINE, not the letter K, the number 9.
Exactly.
.com.
Just remember, There are a lot of dog trainers out there, some more experienced than others. So make sure you do your due diligence when you're selecting a dog trainer. Ask the hard questions. Go with your gut when you're deciding who to work with. And until next time, this is Pack Talk Podcast. Out.